We're going to be talking Bioshock Netflix movie. Make sure you like, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends. Blinded Rail. Now, there's not much that we know about the movie. Vertigo and Take Two are working on it together with Netflix. No director has been attached yet, no script, no talent, nothing. However, Blinded, you had a sort of an idea. You're wondering what kind of direction it might go in. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, because I mean, if you played Bioshock, the game is it's a very kind of heady game that deals with a lot of different ideas, right? Like objectivism and your choice and determinism. There's a lot of like deep philosophical themes about it in right in this game, and hypothetically that could work right in a movie because philosophy does work for a movie, right? Like, but the thing is, the game is designed around the player's choice, right? That's how the story is told. So to me, it's a little bit weird to now take that and adapt into a movie, right? Where you're taking away that element of the storytelling. So that's why I'm very opposed to the idea of a Bioshock compared to a Fallout or a Mass Effect, because those two games, right, Fallout and Mass Effect, are not so much about the gameplay. They're actually about the world building and the characters. So it kind of makes sense to adapt it into a TV show or a movie. And that's why I personally didn't care for the Uncharted, because Uncharted is a rift on. It's basically you're playing a movie. So now the movie goes, we're going to adapt this, and then you just made a generic Indiana Jones movie, right? So that's my kind of issues with these adaptations, or it's just like you have to go and look for the games that are good for adapting, right? It's like books or comics. Not everything is going to be adaptable because you don't have the same medium, right? As like a book, as a novel, or as a comic book, right? And I know a lot of people make the comparison or argument, oh, look, Marvel and DC. That's a little different, right? They have to take creative liberties, right? Not everything is going to be the same. And with video games, the interactivity is going to be missing. So that's kind of my argument.
Now, here's where I'm going to
Well, here's
interject and
my
disagree with
counter
him.
argument.
Oh, go
Ooh,
ahead, Tony.
ooh. No, go ahead, Gary. I want to hear your take first. Then
Well,
I'll
and here's where I disagree is that now when you talk about them adapting it, are you referring to them adapting the game as it is, or would you rather see something along the lines of like I guess what I'm getting at is like post or like Rapture as it's hard to explain. So basically, the way I could see them doing this is the way they should have done a sequel to Bioshock. I want to see what Rapture was like before the fall of Rapture. I think there's a lot of content to go off of if they can capture what this city was like, how it thrived before. And I think all the characters and how they kind of went insane leading up to the fall of Rapture. And I think they really could knock this out of the park. And I kind of wanted to compare this to what I watched last night. I thought we just got done watching the Resident Evil movie, and there were parts of it that I liked. I was more, and I know this is like fan service is not your thing, Blinded. I think like you want, more well-rounded story and character development and all that stuff. Whereas like going into that Resident Evil movie, being that I didn't like the previous Resident Evil movies, that I just wanted fan service, man. I just wanted it to feel like the game. And what really killed me after watching that movie was watching the interviews and everything that they said. And I didn't realize going into that they based that movie more off of the remakes than they did the original games.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't see those
Uh,
movies, but they combined 1 and 2, which was odd in my
Right.
opinion. But yeah,
I was thinking the same thing, Gary. I'd like to see more of an origin story, how they built the city, how daily life was, stuff
Right,
like that's what I want.
and I think it's probably going to be an unpopular opinion here, because I think a lot of people going into it will definitely want to see Big Daddies, like in their connection with the little sisters. But I think it would just be more entertaining to, like, we all know, most of the people know what happened. I mean, if you're going, like, a good majority of the audience probably going into if they really do go through with this, they're going to know what happened in that game. They're going to know that story. I don't think we have to cover
I
it.
don't think so. I heavily disagree. I mean, most video game look at Uncharted. Uncharted is a prequel, but it uses elements from the other games, right? And if they do a prequel of some sort, they're going to have to put elements from the first game. This is a Netflix movie. Like, I think the assumption from a lot of gamers is, well, I know the story, therefore everybody does. That's like, as someone that does work in the movie industry, that's not how producers are going to think. They're going to be like, what's the popular game? Okay, this one, we're going to take all the elements that are recognizable visually and put them in, right? That's what's going to happen in Fallout and when they do the Mass Effect series. Whatever is visually, like, recognizable, Big Daddy, it's going to be in it.
Well, yeah, he's going to be in there, but I don't think in a way that people are expecting. I think if they handle the origin, obviously those suits exist for a reason, right? They were created to, repair the city and do other things. I think there's an element where you can hit, like, this is the problem with I had with Resident Evil. Resident Evil tried to do too much, right? You can't have two things at once. You can either have a game, like a movie that represents the game and feels like the game, or you have a movie. And they always try to, like, interject both these. Like, you can't have both, because then you're like, well, like how I felt with Resident Evil. It just, like, we get that intro where they walk into the mansion, but I feel like it's so disconnected from the game that I'm like hating the movie in a way. Where,
well, the movie's not even really supposed to. This is why, like, that movie, right? I don't need to have watched it to know that movie is trying to play to two audiences, right? It's trying to play to people who like Resident Evil. That's why they shoved Leon and all the characters in there, because that's what people want. And then they also want to be like, well, we also want to cater to the people who know the Resident Evil movies, and then also the people who haven't watched Resident Evil, right? That's what they do with these franchises, is they have to think like like the pillars of who's watching these movies, right? And so and this is a Netflix movie, right? And this is probably going to get promoted to hell and back, because Netflix and 2K, like 2K is going to be like, hey, we have a new Bioshock game, right? That's coming out, which there's also been some news about that at the same time of this movie. But
my biggest gripe with these, like, movie adaptations they do of games is they just can't get the casting right. Like the new Resident Evil movies that come out, look at the guy who plays Leon. It's like, that is not Leon.
Right.
It's like,
it didn't feel, and it feels like they did it on purpose, that they changed him way too much. And Leon's like a fan favorite, right? He's probably the favorite. Yeah, I'd say, next to like Jill or Chris or like Barry. I mean a lot of good characters, and they usually screw it up.
I believe like that's like with The Witcher. I reckon they do well. It does well because they've got Henry Cavill. They give the fans what they want. It's like these places, these companies don't listen to what the fans want. Like, no one really wanted Tom Holland as, Nathan Drake. Well, some may have, but me personally, it's like, no. Like, to me, the person that, well, I know it is a origin story, but in the later movies, if they were going to actually adapt Uncharted to the video games, like the Uncharted games to the movie, the person I think that would play it would be who's the guy that played Angel and was in Bones? David Benavides or something. He would be the one I would think, to me, as would fit perfect for the adaptation, and he's a good actor. So it's like,
and you bring up the perfect point, because I'm not a huge Uncharted fan, and this comes back to like catering to two audiences. You got what the gamers wanted and what they didn't get, and then people like me who like Tom Holland's a likable guy, right? I've come around after the Spider-Man movies and after the Avenger movies that I like him. I
Yep.
think he's really likable, and to me, we watched the trailers, and I said, that looks like a great movie that I want to see. Not being a big fan of Uncharted, and see that is exactly what they're trying to do, and I think that's usually what ruins a movie, is that they have to cater to two different audiences, and it ends up feeling disconnected for the gamer who wants to see a lot of that stuff play out in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I personally, for me, the ones with the most potential is Fallout, because Fallout, you do not have to stick to a game to adapt.
Right.
You can do whatever you want. You're gonna have the normal I'm missing the term, but the visual, right? Like the super mutants, the bottle caps, and the Vault Boy. Everybody's
Red
gonna see
armor.
that and go, that's Fallout. So you could tell any story you want, and then you could insert it. You can even make a cinematic universe and say the games exist, but this is in a different state. This is in a different
Right.
city.
Well,
right?
that lends
And
itself
Basically,
because
all they got to get right with Fallout is the Vault Boy. That's it, and that's not hard.
Well, there's
really-
a lot of things you have to get for me, right? As a Fallout fan, like you have to have the commentary, you have to have the vault experiments, you have to have, there's a lot going on in that universe, and you don't need to do it all in one season, right? Because it's a TV show, but you need
You
to
have
at
to-
least keep the essence of the property.
You have to consider the culture that they might have utilized at the time, but it's like the Nuka-Cola and all that.
Mhm.
And for example, in New Vegas, they have the Sunset Sarsaparilla. So it'd be interesting to see what they do for that kind of stuff over in London.
Well, here's
That's a good
here's
point.
the thing.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing with Fallout, and this is why, you said they're making it into a series.
Yeah, they just casted Walter Goggin, which is a phenomenal actor. So I'm excited.
See, now you guys brought up a good point. Like, Fallout is very able to work, and for one reason, the game is basically you come out of a vault and you can pretty much do whatever you want. Like, you could cast. I mean, the casting could go a lot of different ways, but it's not like dependent. Like, when we talk about Bioshock, like, if they screw up Andrew Ryan, if they screw up Atlas, Frank Fontaine, if they screw up these key integral characters, Diane McClintock, like, that could really cripple the movie as a whole. Whereas I think something like Fallout has a lot, like you guys said, any of it could really kind of, like, they can fit it into a way, and fans aren't really going to be too pissy about it, as long as they get the look right, as long as they get, like, the underlying story right.
I'm afraid that, like, the video game adaptations, right, is going to become like the indie market for video games. A lot of it just going to be crap, but there is going to be some that shine through and are great. And it's just like they're going to pump them out to make money. Like, yeah. And then the actors will get worse. Like, look at Resident Evil, like, from the first Resident Evil movie in, 2002. I did like that franchise. They dragged that out to 2017, and, it sold. Some people liked it, some didn't. But it was just because it was making money, and it just seems like you don't want that to go with the television side of things as well, like, and Netflix, because what do we got now? We've got Fallout coming out, The Last of Us, we have the Uncharted movie, Bioshock. Now they're like, oh, there's money to be made. Let's just milk everything we can off this. Let's not really care about how it turns out, as long as it makes something, And
I feel
that's
like
what I'm worried about.
And I feel like kind of gaming in general has gotten that way in a sense.
Absolutely.
I think when you go back to games like, and I just got done playing Bioshock.
Well, here's the thing. If you remember in the 80s in the 90s rather, they were already trying to milk all these franchises: Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, every fighting
very
game.
Very true.
I think it has a movie, even if some of them are not theater releases.
Good, yeah.
A lot of straight to video. Yeah. Secondly, I'm going to have to disagree with Blinded on whether or not this could be a good movie. Much like Gary was saying, you have all kind of lore for Bioshock that happens before the game starts. You got the building of Rapture. You got the Civil War that happened, during Rapture's height, its golden age, if you will. Then you got the time period after, as it was slowly descending into madness, and where it becomes where you leave off, where you start off the game. So there's a lot of things in there that you could do without even touching the game and still have those characters. You could have Andrew Ryan come out. You could have, how he built the city, what was his ideals, how he saw his ideals slowly but surely erode, where he was making choices that he was like, you know what, I have to do this in order to keep the city going. This goes against my ideals, or this goes against what I was trying to build here. But if I don't, it's going to go to hell. So I got to, compromise on this, then compromise on that. And slowly but surely, you could see how somebody could start with noble intentions and had a good vision, much like the Amico, and then slowly becomes this insane person who's fucking, splicing people's DNA and creating big daddies and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Another thing that I want to say is, I'm not saying that it's going to be bad. What I'm trying to say is I'm not excited because the game, I know what Netflix is going to do. They're going to adapt the game, right? If this was a TV show, yeah, if this was a TV show, I could see them going back to the prequels. But the issue, listen, I think if Kent Lively was involved, and he is a screenwriter, right? He's written plays. You can get him, and I think I would be a little bit more yeah, I would definitely check it out, right? Because it has his blessing, right? Just like what they're doing with The Last of Us. I trust that series because that's Neil Druckmann doing it, and plus that's a story you could adapt into a TV show, right? But like I said, Bioshock has a very crucial element, and why it has been considered one of the best games of all time, right? It's that choice and that theme, right? So
I've got a question for panel and chat. Has anyone seen the Cuphead animation yet on Netflix?
Oh, I heard it was good.
Nope.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's very well animated. You would expect no less from being Cuphead, but it's actually pretty good from what I've seen. I've seen 2 episodes in, and I'm like, this isn't bad. They done the right thing. That's gaming to show perfect, but it's easy because it is animation, so it makes it a bit easier.
And Blinded brings up the biggest point of this is it's the time constraint on a movie versus having a TV series. I think Bioshock would work so much better as a series, even if it's just gonna be a mini series or whatever. I mean, having 8 episodes and maybe dabbling into a second season or something like that, I think would work so much better, being that it's going to have to be crammed into a 2.5 hour experience. I think, Blind is right about that. I think they're going to go that route of kind of just jamming the game and then trying to appease both audiences. And that's where it's gonna fall down. But yeah, if they could definitely turn this into a series, it would work so much better as a series, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree.
Because a lot of video games do need more time. Continue, Tony. You're right.
I was gonna say I seen people in the chat saying that it's gonna be bad because it's Netflix, and I will say that Netflix has a reputation for making bad stuff, but also there's a lot of good stuff on Netflix. I know it's not popular to say this and to admit that there are good programs and good movies and adaptations on Netflix, but there are. I like the He-Man Masters of the Universe Netflix series.
I like
some of the movies,
but here's the thing: what movie? That's the key part. What good movie?
I missed that. What'd you say, Blinded?
So, I would agree with what you're saying, but I would say Netflix makes good series, but I have yet to see a very good Netflix movie that they themselves have put the money and produced, right? Because a lot of the times what people don't understand is Netflix picks up movies and then they slap their name on it, right? And a lot of the times when Netflix goes out and produces themselves, it hasn't gone so well. Like Bright was a perfect example. That was their big push, and it was terrible. It was awful, right? David Ayer and Will Smith and Joel Kinnaman, or not Joel Kinnaman, the other Joel, the guy that was in the prequels. It was not a good movie, and that was their attempt to do something like, like Disney, right? And this is very similar, right? Because this is Netflix team getting the IP and trying to make a movie, and that's my biggest concern, right? If it was, 2K went to a production studio, here's a script, let's do something, I'd be a little bit more optimistic. But Netflix usually, they're just like the studio system, so that's my biggest concern.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
it's such
I'm
a
not
it's
sure
such a
if Netflix produced the Adam Sandler movies that are on there, Hubie Halloween and all those. They're pretty good movies.
Oh,
I
that
think.
movie's horrible. Hubie Halloween is like my most hated movie of all time. I love
I
Adam
haven't seen
Sandler
that
movies,
yet.
but that I didn't like that one. That's probably the one the
Maybe I
most at
just
the
like
end of
that
it. I was
movie.
just like, yeah, we all got different
Hey,
tastes too, you know. Well,
Yeah,
that's what it
yeah.
also
that's a
comes
good point.
down to.
Because
That's what
remember,
creates a good discussion here.
Yeah,
you guys got to remember, I did like Thunder Force, so I might not have the best
really.
taste in movies.
I like Street Fighter and Super Mario Brothers.
I
Hey,
like
I
Super
like those
Mario Brothers.
movies
I didn't like Street
ironically.
Fighter.
Yeah.
I liked the Double Dragon movie back in the 90s.
Oh
Ditto.
God,
Oh boy.
who was
And
that? Was
that's
that?
like, as a kid
a-
watching that, I was just like, this is amazing. Oh my God. And then, like, you watch it this day and age, you're like, oh my God, what was I thinking? But
it's so bad.
yeah,
I was gonna say it's so bad it's good. The Double Dragon
Right.
movie is not a great movie, but it is. I'll sit down and watch it because it's enjoyable. Like, oh my god,
It
this is
does
so
have some
bad.
great
So
elements to it, right?
Yeah, yeah. I can't
for
I
its
do like how they
time,
disagree.
hunt
yeah.
celebrities in the Double Dragon future.
Oh, like
Yeah,
here's an example in the chat. Can I just talk about this? Like Daredevil. Like here's the example. Daredevil was awesome, but Daredevil was not Netflix. Netflix distributed it, right? The production company was ABC, so they had all the creative involvement. So if you're gonna say, "Hey, that's a Netflix series. That was great," right? Netflix puts out good stuff. Netflix is just distributing it. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to get at is that when Netflix is the one with the creative power, they have big issues, right? They don't usually get a lot of good people involved
Right.
because
They
a
make
lot of
bad
people in Hollywood
decisions.
don't like people. People don't know this, but Netflix in Hollywood, people in Hollywood hate Netflix, right? They don't want to work with them, and it's just really a cultural thing, right? Like they believe in the theater going experience, and which I think is unfortunate, but that's the way the industry is, and it kind of sucks, right? Because there's potential with Netflix, so yeah.
And I think that's what it boils down to. At the end of the day, if they can get the team has to come together, right? Everything has to just hit on the right notes and be on the same page. That all the actors have to be, the casting has to be great. The directors and everything down from there. But if they can
Mhm.
pull it off, I think out of anything game related. I know a lot of people have been wanting, to see like a Zelda movie or a Zelda series. I think if anything can work, I think the potential for Bioshock is really up there. I think the story's awesome. And if they go, even if they decide to kind of you just, carbon copy the game and give that to us, I think it could still be, it could be done well. I'd much rather see the kind of prequel because I think that's where the game's really, a sequel really should have went beforehand. I think that's the more interesting story is how everything just devolves and just falls into chaos. But
Mhm.
there's definitely if any one of the franchises can really pull it off, I think Bioshock will be the one. It all depends on whether or not they give it the love and attention it needs.
real quick. Uh, I don't have a list of every movie that was produced. And, Netflix actually had their fingers
Yeah,
into it,
I
so
would
I
have
don't
to
have
give
that.
that to you.
I can't really go. This movie was good in this movie because obviously, but I do know that they had their fingers in Netflix animation in that America, the motion picture, and that is
Mhm.
a fucking awesome movie. Um, it mixes comedy, action. Um, it totally, screws up history. Is like not historical at all. It's got like the British are coming out in like fucking mechs, and people are shooting each other with fucking machine guns, and you got fucking George Washington has like retractable chainsaws in his sleeves.
That does sound good. Cool. That does
before
sound
we
cool.
but before we end this topic, I just want to say one thing to Gary. This wasn't public anywhere, but Netflix was actually developing a Zelda series. There was nobody attached. I think it was supposed to be like Breath of the Wild, but Nintendo axed it because it got out there. So,
the Zelda, for years, people have wanted that Zelda series or Zelda movie. I know I've come across a lot of like fan made stuff back in the day.
Mm-hmm. It's going to happen, but not.
It'll happen on its own time, and Nintendo doesn't want that destroyed. I mean, that's one of their most beloved properties. It has to be done, because if there's backlash from like a series or a movie on Zelda, I'm not saying that it would hurt the the game series, but they want to do it right. They want that done right, and I think that's how Bioshock really should be handled at the end of the day.
They would need like James Cameron or someone on that shit to get it right.
Yeah, agreed.
James Cameron, no.
Yeah, with that,
James Cameron is a.